Welcome everybody to this new HelloID webinar of the October release. So in this webinar we're going to discuss the new features available in the October release, which was released last Monday. And of course we're only focusing on the new features and not on the previous features of the previous releases or what's already in HelloID. And we're trying, of course, to do a little bit of practice use, how you can use this features in the field. And of course, if you want to look more in depth into the features, we have documentation, we have the HelloID release videos, and that gives you more of a in-depth view of the features. So let's talk about more the practice use of these features. Before I begin, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you will get notified when there is a new webinar, so you can join the webinar and get the information we give for free in this webinar. And of course also you will get a notification when there's a release video or documentation videos and everything we do with our YouTube channel. The new features that we have in the October release are a little bit on the technical side. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to try to give a little bit of a practice information how you can use those in the field. But there's not really much to see in their user interface. But we will go through them for you guys. So let's start with the presentation. Oh, and I forgot to mention, but if you have any questions or you want to say something, you can always do that in the chat. I will check the chat between the webinar and I will answer the questions asked there. Hopefully I can answer them, of course, else I will notify you later on if I cannot answer the question at this moment. But most of the questions I will answer. So don't be shy to ask a question. So let's start. So the first new feature is for provisioning. So if we go to the provisioning side and we go to the persons of provisioning and let's go to Prost, I think, Eric Prost, and go to his entitlements, we will see that there's a new button here which does a force update. And that means that if you press this for the person, in this case Eric Prost, all the entitlements will be updated. So if he has an account entitlement, it will send an update for that account, or if it has a permission, it will send an update for that permission. So it's almost the same as the force update for the target system, or for a single entitlement, but in this case it's all the entitlements for a single person. So there are different sites for this. So when do you want to use something like this is, of course, if a person is updated itself, it will automatically trigger an update, so you don't have to do that if the source changes. But sometimes you have kind of a mapping in the target system, and you change that and you just want to test it for a single person. So maybe you say, okay, generate an email like first letter of the first name dot last name, and now I want to change that to the first two letters of the first name and then dot last name, something like that. And if you do this, you can just say, okay, I want to force update this for the person and see what the results are. Something like that. Of course, you can also do this on the entitlement itself, but if you make multiple changes and you want to test that on the person, this button is really nice. So it helps you a little bit with debugging, or sometimes if you change multiple things, you can see the result easier for a single person. Of course, if you want to have multiple persons, go to the target system force account update, or just select multiple entitlements. It's a little bit easier. For the second feature, I'm going to through this and I will check the questions later on, is in the notifications. if we go to the notification, and I will have a notification here, an email to a manager. In the previous version, you always needed to have the to field, but now it's possible to only have the CC or the BCC field, as an example. So you can leave the to field empty. That's a change because some customers really want to have only a BCC field, so you don't see what the email addresses of the other emails that are sent. So in that case, you can do that. Of course, you still have to have one of them. So if I make them all empty, you will see an error. You have to add the to CC or BCC, but if I add the BCC here, so let me do it with something like this, enjoy@helloid.com, then you will see we don't have an error. So that's a new change that we did in the product. The last one for provisioning, it's a bit harder to explain, but what we have is in the Active Directory target system, so the built-in Active Directory target system, we had already implemented the post actions PowerShell scripts. So that means is we just create an account with the mapping configured here, but you can do some PowerShell scripting after the account is created. And you can use that as an example. If you have an Exchange integration, you can use that to determine which mailbox or database the mailbox should be created in, something like that. Or maybe you want to create the Active Directory account and do an action to add Skype or something like that, or maybe enable Teams or something like that. Small things that are related to Active Directory or to the account. And we made a change in there. So if I go to account create, now it's empty and I set the default script, you now have two new data structures available. The first one is the mapped data, and the mapped data is actually all the data that is mapped, of course. So if you go to mapping, you will see here all those fields and the data. So this is kind of an object that you can see here. So all this data will be inputted into the task. So even things like the password, or your option for the password never expires, or the account expires, things like that. And why did we do that? Because some of the data you cannot get from the Active Directory account. So normally you could get all the attributes from the Active Directory account just by requesting it in the PowerShell script. But some of the data, like passwords, you cannot get from the Active Directory account. So then you had to do a reset password or something like that again in the script. So now that's not needed anymore. So now you have the password available in this script. How you can use this is as an example. Preferable, I would wait until we have the notification target system, which is in the milestone. But I'll talk about that later on a little bit. But it could be that you're sending your password through SMS or something like that through this. So you can use the notification to send an email, but you can use here to send an SMS, the password through an SMS. Of course, you will have other issues like the SMS is sent the time it's running. So if it's running late at night, it will send an SMS late at night. But it was just an example how you can use this mapped data. Another thing, I have to tell the map data, we only have that in the create and the update actions. Because in the enable, disable and delete action, we don't have mapping available. The other new object that we add is the account. And that means is the account object, it's the data that it's available in notifications. So what this means is normally you map the account, how you want to create it. It's created, and that account object is sent to the notification so you can use it in your email. But here you can add new fields with this PowerShell. So you can do something, maybe generate a random code. I don't know what you want to do. Maybe a good example is generate a code for a printer, put it in an Active Directory, and you also want to send it inside the notification. Something like that. That's possible here. Because you will get all the parameters you already had for the notification, you can add fields and send it back as a result. You have to keep in mind that if you send it back as a result, you should not overwrite the input account, because else all the other parameters will be gone. So if you create a new account variable here and just send it back like this, it will lose all the other notification variables. So it will overwrite the one that we normally send. If you do not return it, you will just have the default account object, which is available for Active Directory. This notification data is available for the create, enable, update, disable, and delete actions. So for all the actions. So you can manipulate that just like you normally do with a PowerShell system. Let me check if there are any questions. No, there aren't any new questions. So let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so these are the new features for provisioning. There aren't really big ones because we're busy with the big ones. So in the next webinar, we will have some new nice UI changes and big features available. Of course, you can see what those are on the roadmap.helloid.com. So let's go to the features of service automation. So let's go to service automation. And the first thing we changed here is in the request history. So we updated this grid or this view to be in the same style as the delegation activity. And also this helps us to see the request state and the task state. So in the previous view, you only saw the request rate, so it could be approved, but the task could have failed, so it's not executed. And now you can see that more easily to see, okay, it's approved, but the task failed. So you can look in the target system, but in this case, the docs administration permission is not granted because the task has failed, and you can open it and retry it, of course. So it's a little bit easier to see the request state and the task state and if it's really completed. The details view is still the same, but that's something we're going to change in the upcoming months. And also we're going to make it like the tasks that you have here, that you can fire them in the cloud with some new infrastructure. But that's up and coming. But for now, we just changed this view to make it a little bit easier. The second feature we changed is if we go to, let's go to a delegate form, or just a form, could be any form. Let's say the create employee HR, and here you have a form. And if I adding the radio button, and you will see this is horizontal aligned. And now I can go to here and say I want to align these options vertical. So this is a UI change. So now you can just put the radio labels beneath each other instead of a horizontal view, which is nice to have because you can change the appearance of your form a little bit more. And the last feature we have for service automation is, which is a little bit more difficult to explain, and also to see how it really works, because I can create a really complex form with it and do stuff with it. But it's really difficult to see. But what we have is, if you go to service automation and you go to a data source, something like that, and let's go to a PowerShell data source. So let's pick, I don't know, this one shared. I don't think it has any data in it. So please keep in mind that it's only with the data source with the type PowerShell. And if you go to the script, you will now have a new variable available, and that's requested for, and let's say the username. So if I'm going to run it in the cloud for this, and I'm going to execute it, and I go to receive data, you will see that it's my user currently. But there are some limits and ways that you can use this. The first thing is the requested for is the user that is where the product is requested for. So please keep in mind that you cannot use this variable inside the delegation forms. It's pure only for the products. So that's the first one. And there's a difference, because normally we have a requester, and that's available for the delegation and for the products. And that means is the requester is the person that really opens the form inside HelloID. And there's a little bit of a difference there, because the delegated form, you can just open it and then you can do stuff in a form, like create an Active Directory group, or assign an Active Directory group to a certain person and just close it again. So then we can see, okay, that person granted this group to those persons, something like that. But with a product, it's a little bit different, because with a product you can say, okay, I'm selecting a user inside the UI. I will show that in a minute. And then I will do it for that person. I'm requesting that for that person. So there's a difference in between those two values, and you can use those two values, because we have the requester and the requester for. Now let me save this one. Let me execute this one. And now, because I'm just logged in as this user, it's the same. But if I go to a product, so if I go to a product page, and if I go to, let's say, service automation, and I go to self-service products, and I'm requesting a product for myself, the requester and the request for are still the same person. It's still Rick, because I'm requesting the permission, let's say Citrix permission, but also I'm the person that's requested for, because I'm doing it myself. But the situation is a little bit different when I say, okay, I'm going to my manage users. Oh, sorry, I have to log in first as a manager. Let me log in as a manager, because I'm not a manager, of course. So this is differently. So again, the same manage user. So I'm requesting it for a different user, but Amir, which is the manager, is the requester. So in this case, if I open it and I do a request for this one, impact, and I will request it, you'll see that the requester for will be Wendy Balsink, and the requester will be Amir. And that information could be really important in your data source, in your form, if you have a form underneath the product. Why is that? Let me say that I create a product which opens a form where you can select all your colleagues of your department. So if I use the requester, and I will create a product, and I will go to service self-service products, open, let's say Avas is kind of a product that has that. I will open it, and I will have a form here which loads all the colleagues of me from the same department that the requester has. So this works great if it's myself requesting it, because I will get the department from the requester and search in Active Directory or HelloID user somewhere to get all the colleagues that are from the same department. That situation in theory will work great, right? If we go to manage users, I think in most situations it will still work. Because if I'm the manager, I manage users, so this is the manager of that person, I probably would have the same department. Not always, but in most of the cases, it will be the same department. So the requester will still work if I search for the department of the researcher, if all the other users have the same department. Where it goes wrong if you go to manage products, because managed products is a resource owner. So that is somebody that's responsible for, let's say, the Visio licenses. And in this case, he works like an IT department, or it could be Power BI, so it's more data analytic department or something like that. And that's not the same department as the person that you selected inside the users. So in this case, Apak Boras is not in the same department as IT. It's a different department. So here you have to use the requested for. So if you want to do something for the requester to search, okay, what is the person that I'm assigning the permissions for, what are they capable of, you always have to use the request for inside the product. In the delegated form, we don't have anything like that, because you don't select any users, or you have to build it yourself, your user selector, and then you have the data available in your form, and you can send it, of course, to your data source. But you don't have it inside the default user interface that we deliver with HelloID. So in practice, always use the requester for if you want to do something inside a form of a data source. Of course, there's also in some situations in the practice you want to use the requester because you just want to check what the requester is capable of, like the manager or the resource owner. That could also be the case, and then you can use the requester. But I think in most cases use the requester for because you want to add something for that particular user. And that's available now. The requester for was already available in the task, but now it is inside the data source. So you can influence the data sent back to the form, and you can use that. It's a little bit technical how you can use it. But there's a real practice for it inside a lot of companies, how you can use it. So I think it's a really great addition. But yeah, it's in code. You cannot see it in the UI. And it's really difficult to show it to you guys. Yeah, I can build something that works like that, but I can also build it like a static version. So it doesn't give any hopes up. But hopefully I explained it in a way you understand. But let me check if there are any questions. No, there aren't any questions, so hopefully you did understand me. I think this was the end of the webinar, because we have all the new features explained. As I said, I just want to show you a little bit more, because we also made a change somewhere else. And that's on the roadmap. Oh, sorry, it was a mistake. So if you want to see what's upcoming, go to the roadmap.helloid.com. There you can see what is planned. So what is planned means exactly this is coming. So in November you will have these features guaranteed, or something really bad must happen, but then we will communicate that. And the thing what we changed is we already had a milestone overview. So that means is these are the bigger stories. These stories exist, or the milestones exist, of multiple features which will be planned. As you see, the pre, on and offboarding are currently in progress, but it was already in the previous before the previous release, and we're already busy with it. But if you look at the plan, it will be in the next release. So that means is this is something we are busy with a couple of releases building it. So here you can see what big other things we're all currently already busy with. And what we changed here is we only show the provisioning and service automation. And if you see this icon, and you can see it if I click on it or I hover on it, is that this feature will be under a new security license. So that means is this will not be available with the default provisioning license, but you need a security license to use this feature in the future. So please be aware of that. And this happens to be also the order in which we have these big new feature blocks. And of course, there will be other smaller tweaks and more smaller features in between, because we are always checking, of course, in the feedback on feedback.helloid.com, and we will add those in the plan directly if we know that it's scheduled and that we can deliver it. So I just want to mention this little change in the milestone overview on the roadmap during this. Let me check if there are new questions again. No, I don't see any new questions. Then I would like to thank you for listening to this webinar. Hopefully you find this information useful. And again, if you like this, just subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You will get notified when there is a new webinar or there's new information available, like the release videos, documentation videos, how you can set up HelloID. Of course, if you want to see what's planned up ahead, go to roadmap.helloid.com. If you have some feedback you want to let us know, go to feedback.helloid.com or go to roadmap.helloid.com and click on the feedback button. And if you want to see how HelloID works, or you want to check out how HelloID works, go to docs.helloid.com to check the documentation. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and till the next time.